A play by Shakespeare, Act 3, Scene 2, Mark Antony's speech.
Romans, hear me! Then, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears! I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. This is how the very famous speech by Mark Antony starts. The story of Julius Caesar was that he was murdered by his own friends Brutus and the rest of the conspirators. They thought Julius Caesar became too greedy and his lust for wealth and power was to ultimately destroy Rome. So they had conspired to kill him, and they did so by taking turns stabbing at him. Then the arch-villain Brutus had walked out into the foyer, gathered all the townspeople, and told them what had happened. He told them that Julius Caesar had to be stopped, and they had to do what they did for the greater good of Rome. The entire public and all the people believed what Brutus said about Julius Caesar and thanked him for his actions. And they became very angry at Julius Caesar and could not believe he was such an evil emperor. Then came Mark Antony. Mark Antony was a very dear friend of Julius Caesar. His heart was filled with sadness and anger at the death of his friend. He was consumed with rage at what the conspirators did and swore revenge upon his enemies. But he had one problem. The people now were on the side of Brutus and they were against Julius Caesar. So Mark Antony had to find a way to win them over. The fatal mistake that Brutus made was he allowed Mark Antony to go and speak to the people out into the foyer, and he told them to listen to what Mark Antony had to say. And the second mistake was that he left the place. Brutus left Mark Antony alone to address the people, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. Then Mark Antony began his famous oration. The whole speech is long and has many valuable lessons that we can learn and practice. Here we will just look at a few. One of the beautiful lessons is that how Mark Antony, with his powerful intellect, was able to sway the weak minds of the people. In a few minutes, he managed, because of his intellect, to change how people looked at Julius Caesar and Brutus. With just his intellect, he was able to achieve his goal, which was to win the hearts and minds of the people. In his speech, he gives another very famous line.
O judgment thou art led to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason.
Here Shakespeare is teaching humanity about the intellect. Centuries ago, he warned human beings that we have lost our faculty to think clearly and wisely, and we have allowed our minds to overpower our lives. Judgment means intellect. Brutish means the ego and the uncontrolled mind. Men in this context means all human beings. Humanity is now functioning on the uncontrolled mind. Decisions and actions are mostly mind-led, which has led humanity to the state that it is in today. So the scene goes on, and slowly the people started to believe what Mark Antony was saying. They started to change their opinion.
Thinks there is much reason in his say. I'll consider rightly of the matter. Caesar has had great wrong.
Has he, masters? Fear there will a worse come in his place.
Mark ye his words. He would not take the crown. Therefore, 'tis certain he was not ambitious.
If it be found so, some will dare abide it. There's not a nobler man in Rome than Antony.
Now mark him. He begins again to speak.
Poor soul, his eyes are red as fire with weeping.
And one of the highlights of the sermon was Shakespeare's message about ingratitude, a mesmerizing and inspiring warning about the dangers of ingratitude.
For when the noble Caesar saw him stab ingratitude, more strong than Trator's arms quite vanquished him, then burst his mighty heart, and in his mantle muffling up his face, this was the most unkindest cut of all.
Here he says, ingratitude is the worst crime of all. It is the unkindest cut of all. Of all the things that the conspirators did to Julius Caesar, ultimately it was their ingratitude that destroyed him. You don't have to repay the world for all that you have received. Only ensure that you are aware of it. Avoid any form of ingratitude. If this is achieved, the expression of gratitude will follow in due course.